Hi, welcome to today's lesson. Our learning targets today are I can add and subtract decimal numbers. We will practice both today because they are very, very similar. All right, today's lesson starts with a part of a Math Antics lesson. We're going to watch about 2.5 minutes together. And during these 2.5 minutes, Rob will go over both how to add decimal numbers and subtract. Then we'll rejoin together here in this Edpuzzle lesson and try a couple on our own. And then we'll practice independently. All right, let's get to it.
Are you ready? Let's start with an easy one. Multi-digit addition. When adding multi-digit whole numbers, the key was to stack the numbers up so that the ones place digits line up in a column, which ensured that all the other number places lined up in columns too. Then, you just add up the digits in each column, starting with the ones place and working to the left. Well, adding multi-digit decimal numbers works the same way. The main difference is that instead of lining up the ones place digits when we stack the numbers, we line up the decimal points instead. But wait a minute. Isn't that the same thing as lining up the ones place digits? Yes it is. And that's because the decimal is our reference mark that always goes between the ones place and the tenths place. So, lining up the decimal points is the same thing as lining up the ones places. It makes sure all the number places line up in columns. Now, you've probably noticed that decimal numbers can have different numbers of decimal digits. For example, 10.8 has only one decimal digit, but 5.34 has two decimal digits. And what that means is that when you line up the decimal points of the two decimal numbers, they might not form a nice column on the right edge. Some of the digits might be missing. But that's no problem. Remember, if there's not a digit in a particular number place, you can just put a 0 there to help you keep track of things. Now that these numbers are lined up by their decimal points, we can add them column by column. But instead of starting with the ones place, like we always did with whole numbers, we start with whatever number place column is the furthest to the right. In this case, that's the hundredths place. So we'll start there. So we add the digits in each column, carrying or regrouping as needed, and we get 1614. So we're done, right? Wrong. There's one last really important step. Remember, we're doing decimal addition, so we can't just forget about that decimal point. We need to bring a copy of it straight down into our answer line, so we keep the same reference point for our number places. Now we can see that the answer is really 16.14. That's not so hard, is it? And I've got more good news. Decimal subtraction works the same way. You start by lining up the decimal points of the two numbers. Remember that the order of the numbers matters in subtraction, so be sure that the number you're taking away is on the bottom. Then, starting with whatever column is furthest to the right, you subtract the digits column by column, borrowing if you need to. After that, you just bring down a copy of the decimal point and you have your answer. Okay, so decimal addition and subtraction are pretty easy.
Are they though? Let's try a couple more examples just to make sure, because Rob did go through the actual step-by-step adding and subtracting pretty quick there. So here we have another example. We have 10 and 9/10 plus 12 hundredths. So let's go ahead and do exactly what he asked us to do. And that is start by lining up our decimal points. So I'm going to put a decimal point here, and then I'll write the first number. Let's see, that's 10 and 9/10. And then I will put a decimal point just below it on the same line, perfectly lined up. And this number is, let's see, 12 hundredths. And I'll put a 0 in the ones place. Oh, wait a second. This is what Rob was talking about. Here we have this edge that's not perfect. We got this spot right here we need to do something with. Do you remember what he said to do? Yep. We're going to fill that in with a 0 as a placeholder. That looks better. And now we just add as we have done for years. All right, so we're going to go ahead and do 0 plus 2 is 2. 9 plus 1 is 10. We'll carry the 1 to the next place value over. 1 plus 0 plus 0 is 1, and 1 plus nothing is 1. Final step? That's right. Bring down the decimal point straight into our answer line, and our final correct sum is 11 2/2. All right, now you try. Oh, I've locked it off. Now you try. Please add 83 6/10 plus 2 125 thousandths. You'll probably need paper and pencil or some other virtual digital piece of paper with your stylus to get this work done, and then we'll check answers together. Okay, let's line up our place values first. So we have 83 6/10, and we're going to add to that 2. Here's a decimal right here first. 2 125 thousandths. We'll add in our equal sign, our plus sign, and our equal sign. And we notice once again, we have this right edge that doesn't look like a very straight column. And so we have to do what we did in the last problem. Let's add 2 zeros as placeholders this time. That looks a lot better. And add as we always have, column by column, starting with the smallest place value. In this case, it's the thousandths place. Let's see, 0 plus 5 is 5. 0 plus 2 is 2. 6 plus 1 is 7. 3 plus 2 is 5. And 8 plus nothing is 8. Last step, we can't forget this. Bring down the decimal point straight down into our answer line. And there we have our final sum, 85 725 thousandths. All right, let's practice subtraction. Very similar to addition. Here we have 12 minus 1 3/10. And so we need to line up our decimal points first. So I'm going to write the number 12. And remember, the decimal in a whole number is always to the right of the ones place. And then I will write the next number, the 1 3/10, lining up our decimal points. Now, remember what Rob said. This is very important. In subtraction, the order matters. And so when you're given a subtraction problem like this, that's written horizontally, it's the second number that you subtract from the first number, which means it goes on bottom when you stack them up and solve the question vertically. All right, let's fill in our subtraction symbol and our equal sign. And oh, wait a second. Can we take 3 from nothing here? Well, you kind of sort of can, I guess, but what we need to do is fill in that empty spot with a 0 placeholder. Now we can subtract as we always have. All right, so we can't take 3 from 0, so we need to trade first. We're going to borrow 1 from the 2. That leaves 1 1, and we'll make that 1 1 that we're borrowing into 10/10. 10/10 minus 3/10 is 7/10. 1 minus 1 is 0, and 1 minus 0 is 1. We'll bring the decimal straight down into our answer line, and that will give us our final difference, 10 7/10. You ready to try one on your own? Let's do it. Subtract 81 3/10 minus 6 75 hundredths. Let's check answers together at the other side. Go. Okay. Did you begin by writing the first number, 81 3/10, and lining up the decimal points with the second number? Let's see, that's 6 75 hundredths. We'll write our subtraction sign and our equal sign, and we see there is an empty space there above the hundredths place. So we'll fill it in with a 0 placeholder and subtract as we always have. Let's see. We have, 0 minus 5. Can't do that, so we got to trade. And we'll take 1 of the tenths away and make it 10 hundredths. And that gives us 5 hundredths. And then we have 2 minus 7, which we can't do, so we got to trade again. And let's take, that leaves no ones. I'll bring the 1 1 here and make it 10/10 plus the 2/10 is 12/10. And 12/10 minus 7/10 is 5/10. And now we have 0 ones minus 6 ones. Oh, can't do that. Trade again. And make that 10 ones. That's 4 ones left over because 10 minus 6 is 4. And 7 minus nothing is 7. We will bring down our answer, our decimal into our answer. Let me erase this so it doesn't look like an exclamation point. And here's our final difference, 74 55 hundredths. All right. Today's learning target is I can add and subtract decimal numbers. You have some independent practice to complete. Let me know if you need help.